to another episode of In Conversation With. Today I'm in conversation with Preservica, and I'm joined by Gareth from Preservica. Welcome.
Hi Tim, thanks very much for inviting me.
Well, let's just jump right to it. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and Preservica?
Sure. At Preservica, we recognise that, along with I think everyone else, that we live in an increasingly digital world. But what not everyone does recognise is the risk and fragility of that digital information. We know from the conversations with our customers and prospects and people who we talk to that many people still continue to hold their information on network drives and maybe in ECMs, but there is quite a lot of risk attached with those strategies if you need to keep information for the long term. For example, there is risk of media degradation, damage to your hard drives, and if you've only got a single copy of something, a hardware failure can be critical to that loss of information. But on top of that, I think one of the most fundamental elements of what we do with Preservica as well is considering the rate of technology change. So if you think about the software and applications that you're using today in comparison to what you were using 10, 20 years ago now, I'm sure you've recognized that there's a significant shift in that. And so with those technology changes that come, there's a risk that when you actually need to use your information for purposes maybe regulation and compliance, then you no longer have the ability to find it, but also to use it. And that's really where we come in. Our mission is to protect the digital legacy of our customers, their economic, social, and legal information that they need to maintain for the long term, so which can be up to 10 years, 20 years, or even permanent. As an organisation, we're headquartered in the UK. We have offices in the US as well. And the majority of our customers are European, UK, US and Canada based as well. We started off actually as a project working with the UK National Archives just over 10 years ago, developing the tools which are fundamental to digital preservation today. And it's those components which are part of Preservica and that allow our customers to correctly identify and characterise their files, their information there, but also to migrate it to newer, potentially more usable formats over time. And that's what we call active preservation for digital information. Our customer base continues to grow. As it is a majority all cloud-based on AWS. We have solutions multi-tenant for smaller organizations up to private cloud solutions for enterprise-grade customers. They are in public sector, museums, libraries, academic institutions, academic libraries, also local regional governments up to national governments as well, national government archives, and also within the corporate sector where we have regulation becoming increasingly important, corporate archives and the financial industries as well. I'm also very pleased to say that we do have our AWS Advanced Technology Partner competencies for education and government.
Wow, that's awesome. And I haven't met a single customer that isn't concerned with data preservation and how to do that properly. And so now we live in an age of GDPR. And I certainly hear, from our customers that they have a range of challenges when it comes to trying to comply with GDPR, which we know is, it's not a destination, it's a journey. What are you hearing from customers in terms of challenges with complying with GDPR?
Well, there are some interesting ones, particularly, so we work with a lot of archivists, but obviously they have a duty of care to hold information for the long term. There were some more straightforward ones. So initially, GDPR calls out encryption specifically as a recommended practice for protecting information and personal data. And I also noticed it was referenced again in the ICO's latest guidance that was sent out in its newsletter recently. However, we've seen and we're aware that sometimes there is a concern about encrypting all of your information. And that's understandable to the point if you have very valuable information, if everything is then encrypted at rest and you lose the mechanism to decrypt that, of course, and potentially you've lost your critical information. However, we know that by working and offering different tiered storages, many of our customers have been using Glacier for a number of years. So that being encrypted by standard by default was actually able to provide them with some confidence as we moved to encrypting information on S3 by default as well. So we were able to overcome many of those hurdles, in the main, at least with our European customers. We did see some resistance, at least with our overseas customers, who potentially still could be holding personal data for EU citizens. But one of the more interesting challenges is what appears to be maybe a conflict, at least at first glance, between the GDPR regulation with its demands for holding information for only as long as necessary, but also, as we've all heard about, the right to be forgotten. And for organisations that are holding information for the long term, that potentially causes them real challenges. So we termed this in a number of our discussions with our customers and prospects over the last few months, the conflict between the right to be forgotten versus the responsibility to remember. And that sort of can be seen in a number of different organisations, whether you have a duty of care or a compliance perspective. It's unfortunate. I think that in some cases we've seen examples of even UK government perhaps taking an overly cautious view and deleting critical information to do with their constituents or citizens because they felt they had to, rather than considering their ultimate responsibility to protect that individual by holding that information for long enough. So it's been an interesting journey, and I think really we've been able to address that through good communication and good education. And I think most of those challenges are now being addressed and people have a greater level of confidence.